Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show where we take a stack of your sources, articles, research, your own notes, and really try to pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge or insight, all custom tailored for you, our listener.
That's right.
Today, we're doing something really fascinating, I think. We're going to try and peek inside the minds of the world's most successful CEOs.
Yeah,
Not just, what they do, which we see in the headlines all the time, but really get at how they think.
exactly. We're diving deep into what our sources are calling the CEO mindset, that kind of internal operating system, right? The thing that shapes how these really elite leaders see challenges, spot opportunities, and frankly, make those incredibly high-stakes decisions.
It's like the invisible architecture behind everything.
That's a great way to put it. It's the invisible architecture that drives everything we actually see on the surface.
And here's where I think it gets really interesting for you, our listener. Whether you're aiming for the C-suite someday or honestly just trying to navigate your own busy life, this isn't just theory for executives.
Not at all.
Understanding this whole framework gives you some pretty profound insights into, like, effective decision-making, resilience, being adaptable, stuff that anyone can apply.
Absolutely. Think about it. Leading a team, maybe just spearheading a project at work, or even making complex choices in your personal life.
Yeah.
This deep dive is kind of like a shortcut, isn't it? A way to get really well informed about what actually drives leadership at the very top tier.
And crucially, this isn't just like fluffy thinking or guesswork. Our sources really hammer this home. There's academic research that's actually quantified what they call the CEO effect.
A measurable impact.
Exactly. It shows pretty compellingly that the individual leader has this outsized, genuinely measurable impact on how a company performs.
Measurable is the key word there. And you might wonder, well, how do they even measure that? It sounds tricky.
Yeah, how do you isolate just the CEO's impact from everything else going on, the economy, the industry?
Well, it involves some pretty sophisticated methods. Researchers have to rigorously control for basically every other conceivable factor. You mentioned the economy, industry performance, company size, even where the company was headed before that CEO arrived.
Okay.
After accounting for all that, they can actually isolate the CEO's unique contribution. And what they found is frankly astonishing. Studies indicate the CEO alone can account for as much as 25% of the variance in a company's profitability.
Wow, a quarter just from the CEO.
25%.
That's huge. It makes you wonder why. Why is that number so high, especially now?
That's a great question, and the answer is fascinating, that figure. It's more than tripled since the mid-20th century. Back then, it was maybe around 6–8%.
Really? Tripled.
Yeah, and this huge jump, this amplification, is down to a few key things about the modern executive role. Today's CEOs, they just have vastly more discretion over strategy, over resources.
More control.
Way more control, yeah. Thanks to technology, global reach.
Yeah.
Their scope is just so much bigger. And then you have these powerful incentive structures, often tied directly to performance.
Right. Stock options and bonuses.
Exactly. All these factors empower their decisions to ripple through the entire organization with much, much greater force than ever before. So, bottom line, the way a CEO thinks, it translates directly into the most critical strategic choices, the whole cultural vibe of the company, and yeah, ultimately, the financial results.
So, okay, our mission for this deep dive is pretty clear then. We're going to try and deconstruct this CEO mindset.
Let's do it.
We'll be synthesizing the latest academic research, but also looking at documented behaviors, the philosophies of some legendary and, current top-performing chief executives.
We'll dig into that cognitive and psychological architecture, see how it shows up in practice, day to day.
Right, and its impact on the organization, and also, crucially, how it needs to adapt. Because it's not one size fits all, is it?
Not at all. Context is everything. So yeah, get ready for some hopefully surprising facts and maybe a few aha moments. This should be pretty illuminating.
Okay, so to really get a handle on why these elite CEOs do what they do, we first need to understand what our sources call their internal software.
Yeah, the operating system.
Right. And it's not something they're necessarily born with, right? It's more like a cultivated combination of deep-seated traits, really disciplined habits, and these powerful mental models.
That's exactly it. And this forms the essential operating system for how they process just immense complexity, how they keep their cool under unbelievable pressure, and, ultimately how they consistently create that outsized value we were talking about.
So think of it less like a shopping list of good qualities and more like a carefully built internal framework.
Precisely. It's a meticulously constructed framework. These aren't just nice-to-haves, they're foundational attributes. They provide both the stability you need to weather storms and, crucially, the flexibility to pivot when things change, which, let's face it, is constantly happening in today's business world.
Absolutely. Okay, let's start digging into the core components. Our sources highlight these core psychological traits for high-stakes leadership. The very first one that jumped out at me, and honestly felt like a bit of a puzzle, is this duality of confidence and humility.
Ah, yes.
How can you be supremely self-confident but also profoundly humble at the same time? It feels like they should cancel each other out.
It absolutely does seem that way, doesn't it? And it's not just like finding a middle ground. It's this dynamic, almost paradoxical ability that really defines these elite CEOs.
Hmm.
On one hand, you have supreme self-assurance, that unwavering inner belief. You need that to make tough calls, right?
Yeah, and to get people to follow you, especially when things are tough.
Exactly. To inspire stakeholders, rally the troops, they have to trust their own judgment even when everyone else is skeptical. But, and this is the really profound insight from the research, that confidence is powerfully counterbalanced by deep humility.
Okay.
And this isn't false modesty. It's not weakness. It's an active, conscious choice. It's the humility that says, hang on, I might be wrong here.
I had to listen.
I need to listen deeply. I definitely don't have all the answers, so I better find the people who do.
So it's almost like knowing when to use which trait, like flipping a switch depending on the situation.
That's a great analogy. It's precisely that. Think about Warren Buffett. Famously still lives in the same modest house he bought way back in 1958. He genuinely believes that lifestyle, that humility, keeps him grounded, keeps him competitive. It allows him to keep learning and avoid the arrogance trap.
Right. And David Packard,
Oh.
the HP co-founder.
Another perfect example. He defined himself as an HP man first and a CEO second. I mean, that's a powerful statement. It embeds service and the company's purpose above his own personal status. This kind of humility, it's really the engine of learning.
Okay.
It lets a CEO admit their limits, proactively hunt down diverse expertise, and really listen to perspectives that challenge their own thinking. It's the exact opposite of what Satya Nadella found at Microsoft when he took over. He called it the know-it-all culture.
He wanted to change that.
He was determined to dismantle it. So humility fuels the learning. Confidence, on the other hand, that fuels the action. It lets them take everything they've learned and commit to a path with conviction. It really is about deploying the right tool for the job. Humility for soaking up information, confidence for making the call and leading the charge. It's psychological flexibility at its absolute best.
That makes the paradox make a lot more sense. Okay, next up in the trait list, resilience and persistence. We hear these words all the time, especially with entrepreneurs. But how does it look different for these top-tier corporate CEOs?
Yeah, it's definitely more than just being tough or, grinding through hardship. For these elite CEOs, it's fundamentally about the cognitive reframing of challenges.
Meaning?
Meaning, they learn to see setbacks not just as failures to endure, but as invaluable opportunities for growth. Necessary steps on the path forward. Look at Katharine Graham, the publisher of the Washington Post.
Right, during Watergate.
Exactly. After her husband's tragic death, she suddenly found herself leading the company. Then she faced intense political pressure, direct threats even, during Watergate. Her courage wasn't about being fearless. Nobody's fearless in that situation. It was about acting decisively despite immense fear because she understood the higher purpose, the role of the press.
That takes guts.
Yeah.
And then there's that almost legendary story about Frederick W. Smith at FedEx.
The blackjack story.
Yeah, winning $27,000 with the company's last $5,000 just to make payroll. Apparently they'd lost something like $29 million in the first couple of years.
It's an incredible story, isn't it? And while maybe slightly embellished over time, the core message is powerful. That unwavering belief in his vision, that relentless focus on the long-term goal despite unbelievable short-term pain, even resorting to a dramatic gamble for survival. That is persistence at the CEO level.
It's non-negotiable.
Absolutely non-negotiable. You simply can't navigate the inevitable crises, the setbacks, the near failures that litter the path of any major company without it. They don't just bounce back. They anticipate the hit and learn from it.
Okay. So moving on, intellectual curiosity and open-mindedness. This feels like it should be standard for any leader, but what does it really mean in practice at this level? Is it just about reading a lot of books?
It's much more proactive than just passive reading. It's this almost voracious appetite for knowledge from everywhere, not just the usual industry reports.
Yeah.
Sam Walton, the Walmart founder, was famous for it. He had this hunger for knowledge. He'd personally visit competitor stores, even tiny ones, just to watch customers understand what they were doing, what they needed.
Getting out there, seeing it firsthand.
Exactly. And what's really fascinating, and maybe counterintuitive, is that these elite CEOs actively look for disconfirming evidence.
Wait, they look for reasons they might be wrong.
Precisely. They welcome feedback that challenges their own assumptions.
Yeah.
They actively seek out data that might actually prove their initial hypothesis wrong.
That's a huge difference from just looking for things that confirm what you already believe.
It's a massive distinction. This kind of radical open-mindedness, it's the absolute bedrock of adaptability. It allows them to spot those subtle market shifts, those emerging tech disruptions, those changing customer tastes long before they become, existential threats.
So they can pivot.
It enables those really innovative breakthroughs, those crucial strategic pivots. Sometimes it even means walking away from profitable legacy businesses because they see the writing on the wall. It's the polar opposite of leaders who become insular, who only listen to their inner circle or rely on what worked yesterday.
Okay, and the last pair of traits here is another really interesting paradox. Emotional intelligence and detachment. How does that work? High EI means understanding emotions, yours and others, right? How do you pair that with being detached?
It is a profound paradox, but our sources argue it's absolutely necessary for this level of leadership. High emotional intelligence, or EI, makes them incredibly empathetic. They're skilled at building trust, they're effective communicators, they really get their own emotions, and those are their teams, their customers, their partners.
So they connect on a human level. They're not just cold fish.
Far from it. That connection fosters psychological safety, deep loyalty. They genuinely connect. But, and this is the crucial part, this deep human connection is paired with a highly developed, almost surgical ability for emotional detachment when needed.
When the tough decisions have to be made.
Exactly. It allows them to stay calm, objective, rational when making incredibly difficult calls under immense pressure. Think about major restructurings, large-scale layoffs, handling a massive public crisis. Research actually shows elite CEOs tend to score lower on anxiety and impulsivity than the general population.
So it's not being cold, it's a tool.
It's a critical cognitive tool. It prevents emotional over-involvement from clouding judgment when the stakes are incredibly high. It's that masterful duality again, connecting deeply on an emotional level, but being able to make the hard, objective calls necessary for the long-term health of the whole enterprise.
Fascinating. Okay, just to quickly round out this section on psychological traits, our sources also mention a few others that are key. Things like systems thinking.
Right, seeing the whole chessboard, not just the individual pieces.
Right.
Understanding how everything connects, the unintended consequences.
It's the responsibility, not just taking credit, but real ownership.
Yeah, singular ownership. The buck really stops here. Alan Mulally at Ford famously said something like, "Look at me as responsible for every single thing at Ford." That's the level.
Wow. Also, courage, acting with fear, not without it.
Crucial distinction.
Decisiveness, making good calls quickly because delay costs too.
Often more than being slightly wrong, but correctable.
And finally, risk tolerance, calculated risks, and seeing failure as part of the game.
Yeah, embracing failure is necessary for learning and innovation. It's pretty comprehensive, and you can see how they all kind of interlink. Right?
Definitely. It paints a picture of a very specific internal makeup.
It really does. But remember, these traits, they provide the potential, the raw material. But as our sources powerfully argue, it's the disciplined habits that actually translate that potential into consistent, high-level performance day in, day out.
Right. Potential isn't enough.
Not at this level. Elite CEOs don't just hope they'll perform well. They meticulously architect their days and, maybe even more importantly, their thinking processes to ensure they do.
Okay, let's dive into those cognitive habits then. First up, commitment to lifelong learning. We touch on curiosity, but this sounds more structured, not just a buzzword.
Oh, absolutely not a buzzword for them. For top CEOs, learning is this continuous, disciplined, really proactive process. It goes way beyond just passively consuming information. The classic example, of course, is Warren Buffett.
Reading statistic.
Yeah, dedicating up to 80% of his workday just to reading and thinking. He explicitly credits this almost monastic habit with building the deep knowledge base and pattern recognition he needs for his investment decisions. He literally sits and thinks and reads for hours every single day.
80%. That's just incredible. And Bill Gates has his think weeks, right?
Exactly. Biannually, he takes a whole week, goes off-grid in a cabin somewhere with stacks of books and reports just to read and reflect in total isolation.
These aren't just quirks. They're deliberate practices.
They are deliberate, scheduled practices. These leaders actively block out time for learning. Maybe it's listening to podcasts during a commute, scheduling mentorship calls, doing deep dives into new technologies, sometimes even taking formal courses completely outside their own industry.
Why? What's the core purpose?
It's really twofold. First, obviously stay ahead of the curve. Understand market trends, competitive threats, tech shifts, prevent intellectual stagnation. But second, and maybe more subtly, it gives them fresh perspectives, new mental frameworks. This helps them connect seemingly disparate ideas in novel ways, which is often where real breakthroughs in problem solving come from. It's a conscious, continuous investment in their single most critical asset, their own mind.
That's a powerful way to think about it. Okay, next habit. Rigorous prioritization and time management. Time is the ultimate finite resource, and for a CEO, every minute must feel incredibly valuable.
Absolutely. And they manage it with an obsessive rigor that's almost an art form. They deeply understand their main job is to focus only on that tiny handful of critical, high-leverage priorities that only they can tackle. And they build complex systems to protect their time for exactly that.
Like boiling down the strategy.
Yeah. Many distill their entire strategic plan down to just 3 to 5 absolutely key priorities, no more. And then they communicate those relentlessly over and over throughout the whole organization so everyone's aligned.
And their daily routines reflect this focus too, right? I remember reading something about how early they wake up.
It's true, and it often surprises people. One study found the vast majority of elite CEOs are up before 6:00 a.m. About 80% are up by 5:30 a.m. or even earlier.
Wow. Why so early? Just discipline.
It's not just discipline, it's a strategic choice. It gives them those crucial quiet hours at the start of the day for proactive work, deep thinking, strategic planning, maybe exercise before the onslaught of reactive demands, emails, and meetings begins.
Controlling the controllable part of the day.
Exactly. They also structure their schedules, as our sources describe it, using a tight but loose approach. Key meetings are locked in, non-negotiable, but they deliberately build in white space too.
White space, like free time.
Sort of. It's buffer time for reflection, for dealing with the unexpected opportunities or crises that inevitably pop up. It's not just about being efficient, it's a strategic weapon. It ensures they have bandwidth for the truly high-leverage activities that actually move the needle.
That idea of white space leads perfectly into the third cognitive habit, structured self-reflection. In such a high-pressure, always-on role, it must be so easy to just react constantly.
Incredibly easy, just bouncing from one fire to the next. They actively combat that by building in structured, non-negotiable time for self-reflection. It's about consciously stepping back from the daily whirlwind.
To process, to
Yeah.
learn.
Exactly. To process information more deeply, learn from experiences, both the wins and the losses, and maintain that crucial strategic clarity. It takes different forms for different people. Could be Gates's Think Week, could be daily meditation, regular journaling, or simply scheduling unstructured time just for quiet thinking. The key is the intentional creation of that mental space.
So this white space isn't just downtime, it's actually part of the work, part of the decision-making engine.
Absolutely. It's active processing time. It allows their brains to connect those disparate ideas we talked about, to wrestle with complex, multi-layered problems that don't have easy answers. It helps them shift from being constantly reactive to being more proactive. By regularly asking what's working, what's not, why, they engage in continuous self-correction.
And fight biases.
Yes. It's a critical defense against common cognitive biases and also against decision fatigue, which is a real danger in these roles and can seriously degrade leadership quality over time. It's how they stay sharp, objective, and adaptable.
Okay, so we have the internal traits, the discipline habits. Now let's get into the actual tools they use to process the world. Mental models for navigating complexity.
The mental models.
Yeah. Our sources describe these as simplified representations of how the world works, essential for cutting through the noise, figuring out what's really going on, and making better decisions. And it's not just one model, right? It's like a whole toolkit, a lattice work.
Yes, exactly. Think of it like an integrated cognitive operating system, a set of powerful filters for reality. And the best CEOs, they don't just use one model here and another there in isolation. They use them systemically, often almost unconsciously, weaving them together.
Can you give an example of how they might combine them?
Sure. A CEO might use, say, first principles thinking to brainstorm a radically new strategic approach. Then they might consciously apply inversion to figure out all the ways that new strategy could spectacularly fail. And then, before committing huge resources, they might employ second-order thinking to map out the potential long-term ripple effects, the unintended consequences down the line. This kind of integrated approach, it really elevates decision-making. It moves it from just gut feeling, from intuitive art, towards a more disciplined analytical science. It helps significantly debias their judgment.
Okay, let's break down some of the key models mentioned. First principles thinking. Elon Musk is famous for this one. What exactly is it?
It's fundamentally about deconstructing a problem or a situation down to its absolute core, its fundamental irreducible truths, its axioms, and then reasoning up from there. It's the complete opposite of reasoning by analogy.
Which is?
Reasoning by analogy is looking at how things have always been done or what competitors are doing and just trying to make small improvements. First principles ignores all that.
Like Musk with SpaceX.
Exactly. He didn't just accept that rockets are incredibly expensive. He asked, what are rockets actually made of? What are the fundamental material constituents? He looked at the raw materials, aluminum alloys, carbon fiber, oxygen, kerosene. He figured out their actual market cost.
And found it was tiny compared to the finished rocket price.
Tiny. Which led to the groundbreaking insight. If we could build rockets more efficiently from these basic materials and crucially make them reusable, we could dramatically slash the cost of spaceflight. This approach forces you to question every single assumption, no matter how deeply ingrained, and bypass conventional wisdom. It's a powerful engine for radical, disruptive innovation.
Okay, that's powerful. Next model. Customer centricity, sometimes framed as jobs to be done. How does this anchor strategy?
This model anchors literally all strategic decisions in creating value for the customer. You start with the customer, their deep needs, their desires, their problems, what they're trying to accomplish, and you work backward from there to design solutions.
Like Bezos at Amazon. Customer obsession.
The prime example. Bezos famously insisted Amazon wasn't competitor-obsessed, it was customer-obsessed. He was notoriously willing to sacrifice short-term profits if it meant building long-term customer loyalty and market leadership. The jobs to be done framework, which Clayton Christensen popularized, adds another layer. It suggests customers hire products or services to do a specific job for them.
So understand the job, not just the product.
Exactly. By truly understanding that underlying job the customer is trying to get done, CEOs can innovate much more effectively and build things that really resonate. It provides a clear, unwavering North Star for the entire company.
Makes perfect sense. You're solving the core problem. Okay, then there's second-order thinking. Most people think about immediate effects, right? But top leaders look further.
Much further. While most of us stop at the first immediate consequence of a decision, the first-order effect elite strategic thinkers train themselves to consider the subsequent cascading effects, the ripple effects, the unintended consequences.
How do they do that? Just ask what happens next.
Pretty much. They repeatedly ask, and then what? Or, what are the likely implications of that implication? For example, a company might decide to cut R&D spending to boost quarterly profits. That's a first-order benefit. Easy to see.
But the second-order effects
Are potentially devastating. A weaker product pipeline down the road, loss of competitive edge, declining market share maybe years later, eventually eroding the company's whole future. Thinking in second-order terms is the cognitive engine behind genuine long-term vision. It helps anticipate negative fallout and make much more robust, sustainable decisions.
I can definitely see how that prevents short-sighted mistakes. How about inversion? I think Charlie Munger talks about this one a lot.
Yes, Munger's a huge proponent. It's a simple but incredibly powerful idea. Instead of asking, how can we achieve success, you flip the question entirely. You ask, what would absolutely guarantee failure?
And then avoid those things.
And then you work tirelessly to avoid doing those things. It's a fantastic tool for risk management and for problem solving because it forces you to look at the challenge from a completely different angle.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Say you're designing a hiring process. Instead of just listing all the ideal traits of a perfect candidate, you first invert. How could a really toxic or incompetent person slip through our process? Identify those failure points. Then you design the screening process specifically to prevent those failures. It forces you to proactively find and fix weaknesses, which is often way more effective than just optimizing for success.
So reverse engineering success by killing failure points first. Neat. And finally, the circle of competence.
Another cornerstone of the Buffett-Munger philosophy, it basically dictates, only operate in areas you deeply truly understand. Know the perimeter of your circle and stay rigorously inside it.
Seems simple, but probably hard in practice. Ego gets in the way.
Exactly. For a CEO, this requires tremendous intellectual honesty and humility. It means focusing strategic bets, capital allocation, where the company has a genuine, sustainable edge. It prevents those catastrophic mistakes that happen when companies wander into unfamiliar territory because of ego, or maybe fear of missing out, FOMO. It's about knowing your strengths and, just as importantly, knowing your limits. Play your game.
That's a fantastic set of mental tools. It really paints a picture of the intellectual rigor needed at that level.
It really does. And remember, these sophisticated internal mindsets, these ways of thinking, they don't just stay inside the CEO's head. They translate directly into distinct, observable behaviors. That's where the internal world meets the external reality. It's where the rubber meets the road.
Okay, perfect transition. Let's talk about how this mindset shows up in practice. Section 2, key behavioral manifestations. First, vision and long-term value creation. This feels like more than just setting targets. It's more foundational.
Oh, far more. It's about defining, articulating, and then relentlessly pursuing a compelling long-term vision. Often, it's a vision that ends up completely reshaping an entire industry. This vision, it isn't just a catchy phrase on a poster. It becomes the unwavering North Star, guiding every single strategic and operational decision.
How does it work as a practical guide?
Well, a clearly articulated vision acts like a strategic filter. Any employee down the line, when faced with a choice, can ask which path aligns better with our ultimate purpose. It allows for decentralized decision-making, which is crucial in huge companies, but keeps everyone pulling in roughly the same direction.
So our sources say it's often not just about winning the current game, but actually changing the rules of the game itself.
Precisely. The really exceptional CEOs, they fundamentally reimagine their company's purpose, its role in the world, often way beyond what's considered normal. Think David Packard again, way back in 1949. He declared that a company's responsibility was greater than making money for its stockholders. I mean, he was articulating a stakeholder view decades before it became fashionable.
Wow. And Steve Jobs.
Jobs didn't just want to build better computers for hobbyists. His vision was audacious, putting a computer in the hands of everyday people. He basically created the mass consumer market for personal computing. He completely redefined the industry.
And Reed Hastings at Netflix. He saw past DVDs by mail, right? Even when that business was booming.
Exactly. His vision wasn't just about efficient delivery. It was about fundamentally transforming the way people entertain themselves. That bigger vision made the difficult, somewhat painful, but ultimately necessary pivot to streaming seem inevitable internally. That's powerful reframing.
But having a great vision isn't enough if you cave under pressure. The discipline of long-term focus seems key.
Absolutely critical. Jeff Bezos is the poster child for this. From Amazon's very first shareholder letter back in 1997, he was crystal clear. Focus on long-term market leadership, focus on customer value. He consistently reinvested almost all profits back into the business, building out massive logistics networks, creating AWS cloud computing despite years of intense criticism from Wall Street demanding short-term profits.
That takes serious conviction.
Immense strategic discipline and profound courage to ignore the deafening short-term noise and stay absolutely true to a distant horizon. That's prioritizing enduring value over managing fleeting perceptions.
And then you have to get everyone else on board. Communicating that vision seems vital.
Absolutely vital. Top CEOs are masters at this. They articulate their vision with such clarity, such passion, such conviction that it becomes a shared reality for everyone, from the board members down to the frontline workers. They don't just say it, they live it.
How do they make it stick in big organizations?
Many are adept at distilling incredibly complex strategies into simple, memorable formats. Maybe a one-page strategic plan, powerful narratives, clear metaphors. This simplification is crucial for translating that high-level vision into aligned day-to-day action across thousands of people.
Okay, that leads us nicely into the next behavior. Decisiveness and proactive adaptability. These sound like they go hand in hand.
They are deeply intertwined, almost two sides of the same coin. In today's world, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, all those buzzwords, making high-quality decisions quickly and proactively adapting to constant change. These are just table stakes now.
You can't have one without the other.
Pretty much. True adaptability is useless if you don't have the courage to actually make a decisive pivot based on what you're seeing. And decisiveness without adaptive awareness of the changing landscape, that leads straight to disaster. Effective CEOs operate in this tight, iterative feedback loop. They're constantly sensing changes, picking up weak signals, and then rapidly acting on that information, often way before competitors even realize what's happening.
So the key is deciding with speed and conviction, but not necessarily needing to be right 100% of the time. It's about avoiding paralysis.
Precisely. Study after study of high-performing CEOs shows they are distinguished by their sheer decisiveness. They understand, maybe intuitively, that the cost of organizational paralysis waiting for perfect information, endless analysis, is often far greater than the cost of making a wrong but correctable decision.
Like that quote from the former Greyhound CEO.
Stephen Gorman. Yeah.
Yeah.
A bad decision was better than a lack of direction. That sums it up. It requires a really high tolerance for ambiguity, the guts to act with incomplete data, and the confidence to course correct quickly if the initial path isn't working.
Okay. And proactive adaptation. This sounds like more than just reacting. It's about anticipating.
It's about being ahead of the curve. It's what some call the paranoid optimism mindset. Elite leaders are constantly scanning the horizon, the periphery, looking for emerging trends, potential disruptions, subtle shifts in technology, or customer behavior.
Like dealing with things not in the playbook.
Exactly. Yeah. Dominic Barton, former head of McKinsey, nailed it when he said a key differentiator today is dealing with situations that are not in the playbook. Top CEOs deliberately carve out significant time, sometimes up to half their strategic thinking time, just for looking beyond the immediate quarter or year, specifically trying to pick up those faint signals of change. It's a state of constant vigilance, but coupled with a fundamental optimism that they can navigate whatever comes.
And then there's the ultimate test, courage under fire. When crisis hits, that's when you really see the mindset, right?
Absolutely. That's when the rubber truly meets the road. All the talk about values and decisiveness gets tested. The Katharine Graham example at the Washington Post during Watergate is just such a powerful illustration.
Publishing the Pentagon Papers, supporting the investigation.
All while facing direct, severe threats from the Nixon administration. We're talking immense personal and professional risk, even the possibility of jail time. But she stood firm. Why? Because she had this deep conviction about the role of a free press in a democracy. That level of courage acting not from certainty, but from deep-seated values and conviction in the face of overwhelming pressure that truly defines the highest level of leadership.
It's different from, say, the Tylenol recall, which was ethical, but more about following an existing company credo.
Exactly. James Burke's handling of the Tylenol crisis was courageous and ethical. Absolutely. But it was largely about executing on Johnson & Johnson's established credo. Graham was forging a path into uncharted territory, facing truly unprecedented political power aimed directly at her and her newspaper. That's a different order of courage.
Powerful distinction. Okay, moving on to the next behavior. Architecting pervasive innovation. This isn't just about having an R&D lab, is it? It sounds more systemic.
No, it's way beyond just an R&D department. It's about recognizing that in today's economy, innovation isn't a luxury. It's the fundamental price of relevance. The CEO's role shifts here. They become the chief architect, deliberately designing systems in a culture where innovation is pervasive, continuous, and frankly expected throughout the entire organization.
So innovation as a system, not just a department goal. How did they actually weave that into the company fabric?
Leaders like Steve Jobs at Apple or Elon Musk at Tesla and SpaceX, they embed innovation into the very DNA of their companies. It's a constant, iterative cycle. Question assumptions, run experiments, refine quickly. This requires a deep, unwavering commitment to R&D, sure, but also proactive adoption of new tech like AI, and often creating dedicated breakout teams, empowered to challenge the status quo, even cannibalize existing products.
Building a creativity engine.
The goal is to build a self-perpetuating engine of creativity and discovery, one that doesn't rely solely on flashes of individual genius, but on reliable systemic processes for generating and testing new ideas.
And this absolutely requires the right kind of a culture, right? That learn-it-all versus know-it-all idea comes back.
Absolutely essential. You need the right cultural software for the innovation hardware to work. Satya Nadella's transformation of Microsoft is the perfect case study here. He inherited a culture that was widely seen as rigid, siloed, risk-averse. Definitely know-it-all. Internal competition often killed good ideas.
And his insight was, change the culture first.
His strategic insight was profound. To change Microsoft's external performance, he first had to fundamentally change its internal mindset. So he systematically went about replacing that old culture with a vibrant, learn-it-all culture. One based on curiosity, empathy for customers and colleagues, and a core belief in growth mindset.
How did he do that practically in such a huge company? What were the levers?
He didn't just talk about it. He embedded the new values into the company's core operating system. He changed how performance reviews worked, shifting rewards towards collaboration and learning, not just individual heroics. He championed company-wide hackathons to spark cross-functional innovation and break down those silos. And maybe most importantly, he personally modeled the behavior. He talked openly about his own learning, his own mistakes, emphasized empathy. He essentially re-engineered the culture from being a barrier to innovation into being its primary catalyst. That's widely credited with Microsoft's incredible resurgence.
That's a masterclass in cultural architecture. And then empowering the edges, making sure good ideas can surface from anywhere.
Exactly. Because the reality is, breakthrough ideas rarely bubble up exclusively from the executive suite. They often come from the edges, from employees closest to the customer, closest to the technology, seeing problems or opportunities firsthand.
So how do CEOs tap into that?
The best CEOs create deliberate channels, and crucially, a culture that encourages ideas to flow upwards, regardless of hierarchy. Steve Jobs had his famous annual Top 100 retreats. He'd gather the 100 people he thought were most vital to Apple's future, regardless of their official title, for intense, candid discussions and brainstorming.
Getting the right people in the room, not just the highest ranking.
Precisely. Jensen Huang at NVIDIA is known for a similar inclusive style in meetings, where a fresh graduate might be in the same strategy session as a senior VP, and their input is genuinely valued. It's about valuing the idea over the job title, ensuring the best concepts rise to the top wherever they start.
Creating a true meritocracy of ideas.
Okay, and the final behavior in this section, the productive failure paradigm. This sounds so counterintuitive to traditional business thinking, which is often about eliminating failure.
It really is counterintuitive, but it's a pivotal concept for innovation. While traditional management often treats failure as something to be punished or swept under the rug, elite CEOs fundamentally reframe it. They see it as an indispensable part of discovery, learning, and ultimately, growth.
So the logic is, if you're not failing sometimes, you're not trying hard enough.
That's often their mantra, yeah. If an organization isn't experiencing some failures, particularly in its experimental efforts, it probably means it's not taking enough calculated risks. It's not pushing the boundaries hard enough to find the next big thing.
So how do they make it okay to fail? Treat it as data. Exactly. They actively cultivate a culture of high psychological safety. That's an environment where employees feel secure enough to take calculated risks, to voice dissenting opinions, even to admit mistakes without fearing blame or retribution. When an experiment or initiative doesn't pan out, the immediate focus isn't who screwed up. It's, okay, what did we learn from this? How can we apply that learning to the next attempt? This massively accelerates the organization's learning cycle.
How do leaders signal that this is okay?
They do it by openly discussing their own setbacks, showing a vulnerability, and by visibly recognizing or even rewarding teams that extract valuable lessons from failed experiments, not just the successful ones.
But surely not all failures are good failures. There has to be a distinction.
Oh, absolutely crucial distinction. This isn't about encouraging carelessness or incompetence. Amy Evanson at Harvard, who's done pioneering work on psychological safety, distinguishes between things like simple mistakes, intelligent failures, which happen when exploring new territory, and actual violations, which are deliberate deviations from required processes. Elite CEOs get this nuance. Jeff Bezos, for example, famously said he celebrates experimental failure, things like testing new feature that doesn't work because that's a necessary cost of invention. But he has absolutely zero tolerance for operational failure, messing up something that should be a well-oiled process due to poor execution.
So encourage the right kind of wrong.
Precisely. Encourage pushing boundaries and experimenting to find new solutions while maintaining rigorous accountability for executing the core business flawlessly. It's about taking smart risks, not reckless ones.
And the resilience piece is obviously huge here, learning from those setbacks.
Absolutely fundamental. History is littered with examples of leaders and companies that faced profound failure or rejection before achieving massive success. Walt Disney getting fired for lacking imagination. J.K. Rowling getting Harry Potter rejected countless times. The key isn't to seek failure, but to cultivate the deep resilience and intellectual humility needed to learn everything you possibly can from it when it inevitably happens.
And the opposite is often hubris.
Exactly. When you analyze major CEO flameouts, you often see a pattern. Hubris, overconfidence, a total resistance to feedback, digging in their heels on flawed strategies instead of adapting. Productive failure requires the humility to admit you were wrong and the resilience to pivot using that hard-won new knowledge.
Okay, it's crystal clear now that a CEO's mindset isn't just some private internal thing. It acts like an amplifier, radiating throughout the entire organization. It shapes the culture, the actions, the performance. The CEO really is the central node.
That's a fantastic way to capture it. The CEO is the emotional and intellectual epicenter. And that corporate culture, that complex web of shared norms, beliefs, those unwritten rules of how things really get done, it's a tangible, powerful force. It either propels a company forward or holds it back. And our sources are adamant. The CEO is its primary architect.
But they don't design it like blueprinting a building, right? It emerges.
Exactly. Culture isn't something a CEO decrees from on high. It's more like the cumulative result, often the lagging indicator, of the CEO's own consistently applied mindset and their daily behaviors, day after day after day.
So, okay, tracing that chain. The CEO's core beliefs, their mindset, drive their consistent actions. Those actions then create the systems and norms, how meetings run, how failure's handled, what gets rewarded. And over time, that solidifies into the company's culture, the way we do things around here.
Precisely. And the implication is profound. Any attempt to change a company's culture without first fundamentally shifting the leadership's core mindset and behaviors, it's almost certainly doomed to fail. An organization's culture is a direct, often brutally honest mirror reflecting its leaders' true values and priorities. Their actions speak way louder than words.
So David Packard's personal humility, his belief in HP's purpose, that wasn't just him. That became the bedrock of the legendary HP way culture: trust, respect, contribution.
Exactly. And conversely, think about Uber under Travis Kalanick. That aggressive frat house culture that eventually led to his downfall. It directly reflected a leadership mindset that seemed to prioritize growth at almost any cost, often above ethical considerations or employee well-being, what leaders model, what they reward, even what they simply tolerate. That inevitably becomes the norm.
This brings up that phrase our sources used: the soft stuff is the hard stuff. For a long time, culture was seen as kind of secondary, right? Nice to have, but not critical like finance.
Yeah, that was the old thinking. But excellent CEOs today recognize that culture, talent development, overall organizational health, these aren't soft or peripheral issues at all. They are incredibly hard, measurable drivers of performance. They have to be managed with the same analytical rigor as any other core business function.
Because a bad culture can kill a great strategy.
Absolutely. They understand that a healthy, high-performing culture isn't just beneficial. It's an absolute prerequisite for successfully executing any strategy. There's compelling research here, too. McKinsey found that CEOs who rigorously measure and actively manage cultural elements, going beyond just basic engagement surveys to look at things like strategic alignment, quality of execution, adaptability, they more than double their odds of strategy success. And they can triple total shareholder returns over the long run.
Wow, double and triple. That's a serious business case for focusing on culture. And the Satya Nadella story at Microsoft keeps coming up as the prime example of a CEO deliberately reshaping culture for business results.
It really is the textbook case study for our times. Nadella acting as a deliberate, systematic cultural architect. Remember, he inherited a culture widely seen as toxic, siloed, internally competitive, risk-averse, the know-it-all problem. His fundamental strategic insight, according to our sources, was this. To change Microsoft's external market performance and regain relevance, he first had to fundamentally change its internal mindset.
And he did that with the whole Learn It All campaign, focusing on growth mindset, curiosity, empathy.
Yes, but crucially, it wasn't just posters and slogans. He systematically embedded these new values into the company's core operational processes. He changed performance reviews to reward collaboration and learning. He championed hackathons to break down silos and spark innovation. And as we mentioned, he personally modeled the behavior, relentlessly talking about learning, admitting mistakes, emphasizing empathy. He literally re-engineered the company's social operating system from the top down, driven by his own changed mindset, and the results speak for themselves.
So how do CEOs actually make this cultural transmission happen in huge global companies? What are the practical levers they pull day to day?
They use several key levers, and they're all interconnected. Strategic communication is huge. Regular, authentic, consistent messages from the top, reinforcing the vision, the values, building transparency. Recognition and reward systems are powerful. They make abstract values concrete by vividly rewarding the behaviors you want to see. Critically, they empower their direct reports and middle managers. These folks are the primary interface for most employees. They have to become committed carriers of the culture, coaching their own teams. But ultimately, the most potent mechanism, it's the CEO's own behavior. consistently walking the walk, visibly embodying the desired values in their everyday actions. That provides the most credible and influential model for everyone else.
Lead by example, consistently. Okay, let's shift to the hard numbers again. The CEO effect. Quantifying the link between leadership and performance. This isn't just anecdotal, there's solid research.
Exactly. Our sources point to some really groundbreaking academic work, like from the Terry College of Business at Georgia. They've developed these sophisticated statistical models to actually isolate and measure the CEO's unique individual contribution to how a firm performs.
After filtering out all the other noise, economy, industry, etc.
Right. After rigorously controlling for all those external factors, they attribute, as we said earlier, roughly 25% of the variance in a firm's overall profitability directly to the individual CEO.
25%. It bears repeating because it's such a massive number, quantifying their sheer influence. And it's way up from the past.
Dramatically up, from maybe 6–8% back in the 50s and 60s. The researchers point to a few reasons for this surge. Modern CEOs just have way more strategic levers and buttons they can push. Think global supply chains, rapid tech adoption, strategic outsourcing, M&A activity. These tools give their decisions far greater potential impact for good or ill.
And the incentives are bigger too.
And the incentives, yeah. Modern compensation structures, often heavily weighted towards stock performance, push them towards making bolder choices, driving active, transformative change. This research really underscores the incredibly high stakes of CEO leadership today.
And there's even research looking at how they spend their time linking specific behaviors to success. That sounds fascinating.
It is really illuminating. There was a large-scale study, over 1,000 CEOs across 6 countries, where they meticulously analyzed their daily diaries to measure what they actually did all day. It identified 2 broad archetypes.
Which were?
Leaders, CEOs who spent a significant chunk of their time in multifunctional high-level strategic meetings, focused on the overall direction of the company.
Yeah.
And then managers, CEOs who focus more on one-on-one meetings within specific core functions, diving deeper into operational details.
Okay, leaders versus managers. And what was the link to performance?
They found a clear, statistically significant correlation. The leader behavior pattern was linked with higher firm productivity and profitability. To put a number on it, a 1 standard deviation shift towards that leader behavior profile was associated with about a 7% increase in sales.
7%. That's concrete proof that how a CEO allocates their scarcest resource, their time, directly hits the bottom line. Focusing on strategy pays off.
It seems to, yes, but there's an important nuance here about match quality. The research suggests the leader style isn't universally superior in all situations.
Okay. So it depends.
It really depends. Firm performance is actually optimized when the CEO's behavioral style is correctly matched to the specific needs and context of the firm at that time. For instance, think about a company in deep crisis, needing a rapid, hands-on turnaround. It might benefit hugely from a more detail-oriented operational manager style for a while.
Right. Get in there and fix things.
Exactly. Conversely, a stable company experiencing steady growth might thrive under a high-level strategic leader style who empowers their teams to execute. The big implication. Inefficient CEO assignments, putting a great leader type in a crisis needing a manager, or vice versa, that's a significant source of lost productivity and value destruction. It really refutes the idea of a single best CEO mindset and hammers home the importance of context.
The right CEO for the right season makes total sense. What about experience? Is more always better? Does climbing the ladder predictably lead to better CEO performance?
That's another area where the research reveals more complexity than you might think. Studies using natural language processing to analyze thousands of CEO resumes found some nonlinear relationships. For functional breadth, meaning how many different departments or areas they've worked in, they found a U-shaped relationship with performance.
U-shaped, meaning?
Meaning that CEOs who were either deep specialists, spent most of their career mastering one complex function, or true generalists, gained experience across many diverse areas, tended to perform better. The ones in the middle, who maybe dabbled in a few areas but didn't achieve deep mastery or broad perspective, they performed less well on average.
Interesting. So either go deep or go broad, but avoid the middle ground.
That seems to be the suggestion. And for functional depth, like how long they spent in specific roles, they found an inverted U-shape.
Okay, so up to a point, then down.
Exactly. There appears to be an optimal level of deep, specialized experience. Beyond that point, performance might actually start to decline. Why? Maybe cognitive rigidity sets in, maybe they become less adaptable, maybe they over-rely on past playbooks that no longer fit. This really challenges that simple, more experience is always better assumption. It highlights that the type and combination of experience and maybe how recently it was acquired matters immensely. Adaptability might trump sheer tenure.
That's incredibly insightful. It really drives home that context is critical, which I think leads us perfectly into our final major section.
Indeed, context is absolutely king. This whole deep dive reinforces that there's no single, universally perfect CEO mindset. Effective leadership is highly adaptive, intrinsically context-dependent. We can think about it as needing mindset market fit, just like startups need product market fit. A fundamental mismatch between the CEO's dominant way of thinking and the demands of the company situation. That can be just as fatal as launching a product nobody wants.
Okay, let's explore this context dependency. First, comparing startup leadership versus big corporate leadership. The founder's mentality versus the steward's discipline. How different are their required mindsets?
They are fundamentally almost diametrically opposed in many ways. Think about the startup CEO's environment. Extreme uncertainty, usually very limited resources, existential risk breathing down their neck every single day, their mission. Find a viable business model, grow incredibly fast, and just survive. This demands what our sources call a founder's mentality or an insurgent mindset.
Which means being super agile, experimental.
Exactly. They need an almost innate ability to pivot on a dime, constantly hypothesizing, running cheap tests, iterating based on feedback. They need an incredibly high tolerance for risk, being comfortable making bold bets with incomplete data, thriving in ambiguity, learning super fast from frequent failures.
And very hands-on.
Extremely hands-on. They're often wearing multiple hats: product, sales, marketing, fundraising. They're a doer as much as a manager in the early days. And they have to be the chief evangelist, constantly selling the vision to attract talent and crucial early funding. Their core challenge is literally creating something out of nothing, often by breaking rules and disrupting incumbents.
Okay, contrasted with the corporate CEO, the steward, what's their world like?
Their world is one of scale, complexity, established processes, and intense public scrutiny. They're leading large, often multinational enterprises. Their mission isn't usually creation from scratch, but ensuring the sustainable, profitable growth of an existing massive entity. This requires a very different mindset than steward's discipline.
More focus on oversight and delegation?
Much more. Their focus is on high-level strategy, sophisticated capital allocation across a complex portfolio, managing intricate stakeholder relationships, and relying heavily on established systems and processes to run the machine efficiently.
And their approach to risk is different too, protecting the existing asset.
Yes, it shifts towards calculated risk management. They still take risks, often involving huge sums of money, but it's within a more structured framework. They have profound responsibility to protect the value already created. Their focus is often on optimizing processes, achieving economies of scale, managing complexity more like perfecting the rulebook than tearing it up. And a huge part of their job is navigating that complex web of stakeholders: the board, shareholders, employees, customers, regulators, the public.
That sounds like an incredibly difficult transition for a successful founder to make. We often see founders who are brilliant early on but struggle as the company scales massively.
It is without doubt one of the toughest leadership journeys. That necessary mind shift requires evolving from being the primary hands-on doer and visionary innovator to being the primary delegator and strategic orchestrator. From risk-seeking rule breaker to strategic risk manager. From product visionary to leader of leaders.
Why is it so hard?
Because the very traits that made them wildly successful in the chaotic early days, that relentless drive, the need for control, the rapid pivoting, can become significant liabilities at scale. At scale, process, delegation, patience, and navigating complex organizational dynamics become paramount. Many brilliant founders just can't or don't want to make that fundamental shift.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's shift context again. The digital imperative. Evolving mindsets from manufacturing to technology. How do different industries shape the required mindset?
Historically, yeah, there was a clearer divide. The traditional manufacturing CEO mindset was really rooted in what academics call goods-dominant logic. The focus was squarely on the tangible product itself.
Efficiency, process control.
Exactly. All about operational efficiency, rigorous process optimization, lean manufacturing, cost discipline, meticulously managing physical supply chains. Innovation tended to be incremental, making the existing products slightly better or cheaper. And that mindset worked extremely well for decades in a relatively stable industrial economy. But its limits are being starkly exposed now
By the speed of tech change.
by the sheer speed and volatility driven by digital technology. The tech CEO mindset, in contrast, is rooted in service-dominant logic. Value is seen as co-created with the customer, often through a dynamic, continuously evolving service or platform, not just a static product.
So what characterizes that tech mindset? Agility, data.
Extreme agility and speed are paramount. There's a bias for action, often embracing being fast and wrong over slow and right if it means capturing a market. They are inherently data-driven, fluent in analytics, using real-time information to constantly iterate and pivot. And they embody that entrepreneurial innovation spirit, embracing creative destruction, willing to disrupt existing models, even their own cash cows.
But the lines are blurring now, right? Our sources talk about Industry 4.0. What does that mean for these mindsets?
It means a massive convergence is underway. Industry 4.0 refers to this fourth industrial revolution, where digital tech, IoT sensors, AI, machine learning, big data, robotics is being deeply integrated into traditional manufacturing and physical industries. Factories are becoming smart, hyper-connected, data-generating ecosystems.
So digital transformation isn't optional anymore for manufacturers.
It's absolutely requisite for survival, let alone competitiveness. And the implication for leadership mindset is huge. Traditional manufacturing CEOs now must possess much of the digital fluency and agility previously associated only with tech leaders.
They need to understand data, AI, lead cultural change.
Precisely. They need to grasp complex data architectures, make smart strategic investments in AI and IoT platforms, and maybe the hardest part, lead a fundamental cultural shift within their historically more conservative organizations towards agility, experimentation, and data-driven decision-making. The old efficiency-focused mindset, while still vital for execution, just isn't sufficient anymore for setting strategy. In effect, every CEO is becoming a tech CEO to some degree. It's a massive leadership challenge.
That really underscores how dynamic the role has become, and this leads us to the big picture historical view, the evolution of the executive mind, from industrial baron to digital age visionary.
Yeah, this concept powerfully shows that the idea of the best CEO mindset isn't fixed. It has evolved dramatically over the last century or so, responding to huge shifts in technology, global economics, and society's expectations of what corporations should be.
Okay, let's walk through that evolution quickly. Early 20th century, the industrial age, the command and control manager.
Their mindset was forged in the era of mass production, huge factories, hierarchical structures. The primary focus was operational efficiency, standardization, managing large, often unionized workforces. The style was very top-down, authoritative, designed for predictability and discipline. The CEO was the master of a complex machine.
Then, mid-century post-war boom, the strategist emerges.
Right. As companies got bigger, more diversified, went global, the CEO role had to evolve beyond just being an operational overseer. They became the architect of long-term corporate strategy. This era saw the birth of formal strategic management frameworks. Focus shifted to market positioning, diversification, long-range planning, managing multinational operations, much more outward-looking.
And then the 80s through the 2000s, the era I definitely remember, shareholder primacy.
Yeah, heavily influenced by economists like Milton Friedman. The CEO mindset became intensely, almost singularly, focused on maximizing shareholder value. The prime directive was boost earnings per share, drive up the stock price, deliver short-term returns. This led to trends like leaner structures, aggressive cost-cutting, lots of M&A activity, and CEOs became much more public figures too, thanks to 24/7 business news and intense investor scrutiny, the rise of the celebrity CEO.
And that brings us to today, the digital age, the adaptive visionary. What defines this current mindset, pulling everything together?
This era is defined by unprecedented digital disruption, extreme volatility, and also a significant rethinking of corporate purpose beyond just maximizing profit. So the modern CEO must be profoundly technologically literate because, as we said, every company is a tech company now.
So continuous learning, adaptability.
Radical adaptability, digital fluency, continuous learning are absolutely core. But the focus has also broadened significantly. It's shifting away from pure shareholder primacy towards what's often called stakeholder capitalism.
Balancing everyone's interests, employees, customers, society, environment, and investors.
Exactly. It's a much more complex balancing act. The modern CEO is this incredible hybrid. They need to be a visionary strategist, a deep culture architect, a compelling brand ambassador, a technological evangelist, and often a public figure navigating tricky social and political waters. It demands extraordinary versatility, high social intelligence, and a strong ethical compass, far beyond what was typically required even a generation ago.
Wow. This has been an incredibly rich, deep dive into the CEO mindset. It's so much more complex and dynamic than just a list of traits. It's this adaptive cognitive framework.
Absolutely. It's not a static checklist you're born with. It's this dynamic interplay of psychological resilience, those disciplined cognitive habits we talked about, and that versatile toolkit of mental models all working together. This internal architecture, when it's well developed, is the real source of the visionary strategy, the decisive action, the pervasive innovation that drives extraordinary results.
And the absolute core finding, the thread running through everything, seems to be that the most effective CEO mindset is, above all else, adaptive.
Yes, that's the meta skill, the ultimate competency. It's characterized by that psychological range, the ability to hold those seemingly opposing ideas in tension. Confident and humble, empathetic and objective, visionary and detail-oriented. This flexibility allows them to accurately read a situation and respond with exactly the right behavior needed in that moment.
And this adaptability isn't just luck, it's cultivated.
It's cultivated through that disciplined commitment to continuous learning and structured self-reflection. That's what prevents them from becoming rigid, keeps their mental map of the world current and accurate. They don't just react to change, they learn to anticipate and embody it.
So, thinking about you, our listener,
Yeah.
maybe you're leading a team, maybe running your own business, maybe just looking to grow professionally. This whole analysis boils down to some really actionable principles for cultivating that kind of executive mindset. First, cultivate psychological range.
Yeah, don't try to fit into some narrow, rigid leader box. Focus instead on actively expanding your own behavioral and psychological repertoire. Can you be both the decisive commander and the empathetic listener, the bold risk taker and the prudent steward? The goal is to develop that range and the situational awareness to know which approach is needed when. Think mental ambidexterity.
Second principle, build a cognitive operating system.
Right. Don't just collect mental models like baseball cards. The real power comes when you integrate them into a cohesive operating system for your thinking. Apply them systematically. First principles, second-order thinking, inversion to deliberately de-bias your judgment and elevate your strategic thought. Make it a conscious, repeatable discipline.
Third, lead through vision and culture.
You have to really internalize that deep connection between your own mindset and the external reality you create, especially the culture around you. Develop a clear, compelling vision not just as fluff, but as a practical, strategic filter. And crucially, own the fact that culture emerges directly from your consistently modeled behaviors and priorities. If you want to change the culture, you have to embody that change first. Walk the walk.
Fourth, embrace productive failure.
This might require a real mental shift for many. Recalibrate your view. Failure isn't something to be avoided at all costs. It's an essential, unavoidable cost of pushing boundaries and innovating. Work to create psychological safety where intelligent, experimental failures are treated as learning opportunities, not reasons for blame, while still maintaining rigorous accountability for operational excellence. It's a balance.
And finally, fifth, diagnose and adapt to context.
That principle of mindset market fit is absolutely critical. Continuously, honestly ask yourself, does my dominant mindset, my leadership style, truly align with where my company or my team or my project is right now? Its stage of growth, its industry dynamics, the broader context. Developing the humility and the capacity to adapt your own mindset as conditions change is perhaps the ultimate meta skill. And if we zoom out one last time, that historical evolution of the CEO role, it shows a clear, undeniable, and accelerating trend. The demands are getting more complex, the scope is widening, the pace of change is just relentless.
Which means
Which means any static set of skills or knowledge, no matter how relevant it seems today, is guaranteed to become obsolete, probably faster than we think.
So if you had to pick the single most critical attribute for the 21st century CEO mindset, and maybe for any leader navigating this future, what would it be?
Based on everything we've covered, it has to be the capacity for continuous learning and personal evolution. That's the bedrock.
The ability to keep adapting your own mindset.
Absolutely. The future belongs to leaders who have the humility to recognize their current mindset is always a work in progress, and the discipline to actively shape its development. To navigate the profound uncertainty and complexity ahead, you need a mind that is fundamentally open, resilient, perpetually curious, and always ready to learn and adapt.
So a final thought for everyone listening. What new aspect of your mindset will you work on adapting today? We certainly hope this deep dive has given you some valuable things to think about and maybe even apply. Thanks so much for joining us.